topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, which is home base for me. If we've not met yet and you don't know me, I'm a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose. My team and I help companies to detect and articulate their purpose to thread it through culture and operations. And we work with forward-reaching organizations to develop inspirational leaders who create cultures where people actually want to come to work and do their best. We provide programs that enable individual team members and leaders to discover and unleash their passion and purpose at work to catalyze fulfillment, engagement, and productivity. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at elisecortez.com. Also, if you like the content of this show, you may also be interested in my next book coming out in March 2023. It's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. You can pre-order your copy at bookshop.org or barnesandnoble.com. Now, let's get back into the program. With us today is Dr. Scott Kennard, a medical doctor who is the founder and partner of Converging Health and a physician executive to boards, health systems, corporations, and medical groups. He's also the author of The Art of Medical Leadership, Intuitive Wellbeing, The 7 Numbers, and The 7 Healers. We'll be talking about the problematic state of healthcare today and a way forward fueled by corporate healthcare, fueled by conscious capitalism. He joins us today from Dallas, Texas. Dr. Kennard, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you so much, Elise. It's great to be here with you.
Such an important thing to talk about. I was so happy. How did I find you? As you and I are both members of Conscious Capitalism here in Dallas, and I had reached out to you to invite you to one of our events because I'm on the board. And lo and behold, finding out what you do, I'm like, you must come on my show. So thank you for saying yes.
No, it's exciting. I can't wait to be able to share a lot of really important things that I hope are actionable and life-changing to those who are listening.
Thank you. I love that. That sounds like a great way to start. So I read a couple of your books here, and one of the things that I thought was really fascinating that I think we really have to start with is your defining moment in your medical career in the summer of 1996. Can you talk about that important moment and what you learned?
Yeah, let me create a little background. So I'm a family doctor, been in practice for 35 years now, and really blessed. And my dad's a family doctor, by the way, and so is my daughter. So
wow.
Yeah, we love taking care of people, human beings, like the whole person, not just an organ or not just an infection or something like that. And I'd always wanted to go into family practice. So went to medical school, residency, became the chief resident, and then went to practice in Irving, Texas. And I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, right? Top of my medical school class, chief resident. My practice was growing leaps and bounds. The local hospital was very supportive of everything I was doing. And in the summer of '96, I had 3 patients that died. And, it was absolutely stunning. To give you a quick example, the first one, I'm at home with my family. We're having dinner. I have 4 kids, and my wife and I have 4 kids, I should say. And my beeper goes off, if you remember those antiquated little.
Yes, I do.
And so I answered the call, and it was a patient. She said, I just found my husband on the floor and he was blue. I called 911 and they just left. And this happened to be one of my best friends. He was 45 years old. I just seen him in my office the week before. And while, he didn't look like you wouldn't necessarily want to see him in a bathing suit. He was had a round midsection and was not in the greatest shape. Great guy, really charismatic, really passionate. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'll meet you at the emergency room. So I raced down there, and I got there just in time to watch him pronounce him dead. And my whole world went upside down because I thought that I knew what I was doing, and I thought that I was making a great influence in people's lives. And one of my best friends just died. And to make a long story short, by the end of the summer of '96, I had gotten two more calls, very similar, both for women. One where he woke up in the morning, his husband did, and he reached over to say, "Sweetheart, can I get you coffee?" And she was room temperature. She died of a heart attack during the night. And another one where a family of four was hiking a mountain in Colorado or Wyoming, I forget where. And she grabbed her chest and fell over up on the mountain. And by the time they got her down, she died. And these were friends. These are people I love. These are people I'd seen in my office in the last 90 days. And I had done exactly what I've been taught in the medical school textbooks for every one of them. And I was supposed to be this bright shining star, and they were dead. And my illusions of Marcus Welby went up in a flame. And so at that moment, I had to redefine who I was in the world, why I was doing what I was doing. My purpose just got shattered. Mm-hmm. It was the beginning of the journey that's led me to today.
Oh my gosh, what a way to open, Scott. So the other thing that you also said that I want to bring home for our listeners and viewers is you said that in every one of those occasions, each one of them had said, when you asked them, how are you feeling? How are you doing? They said, I feel fine.
That's right.
Each time, right?
Exactly. Thank you for Elise for bringing that up, because on all of them, when you looked at their data, like their height, weight, blood sugar, cholesterol, blood pressure, all of those things, there were definite indicators they were not perfect and that they may be in trouble. And in my notes, when I went back and looked at it, I literally had said, here are their problems, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first one, he was a little too heavy. He had what we would call metabolic syndrome today. Didn't have that term back then. And his blood pressure was a little high. The second one was a person with diabetes, and she was on insulin. She had type 1 diabetes, and her blood sugar was a teeny bit high. And the third one, she had a family history of heart disease. She had a little bit, her cholesterol was high, not terrible, and she smoked cigarettes. And so, not, oh my gosh, terrible things that are pretty normal for people in the world. But on all of them, I had written out a plan on how we could fix this. And in all of them, they said, but Dr. Conard, I feel fine. I don't want to take any more medicines. I will exercise more. I will eat better. The one gentleman, I will lose weight. And then they went back to the tyranny of the urgent, which is their life. And they never took the actions, and then it was too late.
So then the other thing that I pointed out in when my study of reading your books is you said that you went from you had to change your mindset from being a symptom manager to being a health risk manager.
That's exactly correct. And wow, I'm impressed. You really did read them.
Oh yeah, I take copious notes. Yeah, this is what I do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I'm sure that your consulting is amazingly powerful. I'd love to learn more about that so I can introduce you to people who need a resource like you as we go forward too. But circling back around, I had the wrong mindset. I was chasing the wrong, I thought my purpose was to help people feel better. Mm-hmm. In actuality, my purpose was, and this is what developed out of this, my mission statement for my life is to add years to your life and life to your years by empowering you to take control of your health. Now, that last phrase turns a lot of people off, but the truth is, if those listening, if you think about it, is that I don't eat for you, I don't sleep for you, I don't exercise for you, I don't get cancer screening for you, I don't get my numbers to goal for you, I can't take medications for you, I can't get enough sleep at night. There's only one person that's going to determine how long and how well you're going to live, and it's not me. So that's where the transformation of my medical practice came in, because I realized at that moment that the conversation needed to shift from here's your, I know you feel fine, but I want you to take this pill. I want you to, do this and that and the other thing as far as exercise and getting, eating better. It shifted to, wow, you're at risk of having some really terrible things happen. Here's why there's risk. How can I help?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and another thing that you said in your book that I think is really powerful for certainly for me, as well as our listeners and viewers, is you say 80% of healthcare costs occur from chronic diseases that have been building up in our bodies from anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And these conditions and complications often could have been prevented or significantly delayed and reduced. That is so powerful, so opening.
Well, and for, like I work with corporate leaders a lot on transforming their culture inside their corporation to save lives. And they're like, but Scott, that's not our business. That's not what we do. And this is where in conscious capitalism, I'm working with conscious leaders, because the truth is that the leaders of the people who determine the health benefits inside a corporation, it's HR, it's the CFO, it's the president, CEO. They are either going to have a culture that saves lives or that shortens lives, and that doesn't cost any more. In fact, it costs less if they will transform the culture into one that actually supports and encourages people to take control of their health, to flex the muscle called empowerment and responsibility or accountability, to be a better word. And everybody wins. People are more effective. People enjoy their life more. People are more productive at work. People don't have terrible things happen to them that end up costing the company lots of money through their health benefits. And so that kind of that transformation occurs, and these conditions that we're talking about, you actually can stop or reverse them. In fact, it's very frequent. There's a program that I'm affiliated with that has been rolled out to states, literally to entire states, where people will start off as pre-diabetics, and at the end of 12 weeks, they no longer have pre-diabetes. Wow. And instead of becoming a person with diabetes over the next 3 to 5 years, about 8% of people with metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes become people with diabetes every year. And so by just rolling out a 12-week program in the environment, their corporate environment, 40% of people at the end of the program no longer are even pre-diabetic. And that's all done through what is made available through a corporation. So I believe that there is so much opportunity to transform what today leads people into the healthcare system. And by the way, one of my mantras is the best way to use the U.S. healthcare system today is to not need the U.S. healthcare system today, because it's a disaster. And so stepping into it is scary, it's dangerous, it's expensive. So step one, don't have to step into it, or when you do, be very clear about why you're stepping into it. And so there's plenty of time to act, but the time to start acting is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to bring this home, Scott, in terms of what you talk about in one of your books here. This is just so important. And I'm going to read a little bit from your book because I love the way that you write it. It's so compelling. And then I want you to, if you would, comment on it for us. But you say the U.S. system has lost its purpose. Well, one would think it would go without saying that the purpose of U.S. healthcare is the health and well-being of those it serves. This is not the case. While spending over twice as much as any other country in the world, the quality of care when compared to the other first world countries is among the lowest. Salaries and shareholder profit has become the driving force, and hundreds of thousands of Americans pay the ultimate price of their life every year, often while exhausting their savings and bankrupting their families in an attempt to find medical help. That is so arresting. It just gives me goosebumps.
It's the American tragedy today. I mean, it is the tragedy that I watch played out again and again and again. So, and again, this is not an opinion. I mean, please don't take this as, oh, he's some radical, crazy dude that, has gone off on the U.S. healthcare system. I would ask the people listening to the broadcast today, just look at the numbers. Literally, by the way, when I wrote we were twice as expensive. Today, we're approaching 3 times as expensive in the United States for healthcare as any other country in the world. So let me just put that in perspective. In Europe, or in any other developed country in the world, people would pay the equivalent of what we call our Medicare tax, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And that covers their entire healthcare system, all their healthcare done. In America, we pay our Medicare tax. I mean, everybody who's employed that's listening to this is paying taxes for Medicare. And then we have to buy healthcare insurance, which is $10,800 per person per year. We have to buy healthcare insurance. Now, your company may be subsidizing that, so it may only cost you $5,000 a year, but still, that's $5,000 that the rest of the world doesn't have to spend. And the conundrum in which we find ourselves is that we're like number 37 on the quality. I mean, like almost every other country in the world, delivers higher quality healthcare. So why would we pay 3 times as much to get a very dysfunctional and dangerous system? And that leads me to the last quick point. I'm just going to talk about hospitals today. There are a number of organizations. IHI is one of them. If somebody wants to look it up, they what they have done is looked at hospital deaths from mistakes in hospitals and missed opportunities in hospitals that lead to death. And there are over 250,000 people this year that will die from those 2 things. And
Wow.
that's the number 3 cause of death in the United States. You have cancer, heart disease, and going to a hospital.
Oh, my word.
It is absolutely terrifying. And it's paralyzing when you need the hospital, but you're not sure what to do, because I don't want to die because somebody gives me a wrong medicine, or they cut off the wrong limb, or I get an infection in my blood because they didn't wash their hands properly, whatever. So you have to be very thoughtful and very careful about how to navigate the U.S. healthcare system today.
Okay, on that sobering note, let's take our first break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We run the air with Dr. Scott Conard, a medical doctor who is the author of The Art of Medical Leadership, Intuitive Wellbeing, The 7 Numbers, and The 7 Healers. We've been talking a bit about the dismal state of the American healthcare system. After the break, hang in there. We're going to start talking about a way forward. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to the program. Before we get back to Scott here, let me also invite you to check out my book that I put out in August of 2020. It's called Purpose Ignited. And I really wrote that book to awaken readers to their passion and purpose and start them down the path of becoming an inspirational leader to be able to lead their team to greatness. I'll help you check it out. If you're just now joining the program, my guest today is Dr. Scott Conard, a medical doctor who is the founder and partner of Converging Health, and he's a physician executive to boards, health systems, corporations, and medical groups. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So before we get more into a way forward here, Scott, there's a couple other things that I want to present for our listeners and viewers that I just think are so incredibly powerful about just really what's going on. So what I really appreciate about what we're doing here is we're really elevating consciousness here. Right? Being conscious capitalists, we're elevating consciousness. But one of the things that you say in one of your books is you say shareholders are not winning. And you say the golden rule, he who has the gold rules, does not apply to the U.S. healthcare system today. So would you go on and share a bit more about what's behind, this notion of the stakeholders not winning today?
Yes. So this is the marriage of conscious capitalism with all the work of my purpose in life, which I would call conscious healthcare. And I love the way you articulated that, because it was hard for me to understand when I thought about conscious healthcare, what that meant. And you are exactly correct. It means awareness, increased awareness, and going from a small, kind of viewing things narrowly, like I run my company, I have my health, to stepping back and saying the culture of my company and my health benefits are going to determine how long and how well the people who work in my company, including myself, will live. And that trip from kind of selfishness to influence is the transformation that I'm putting on the street everywhere that I go. And so I forgot your question exactly. Tell me.
Yeah, I wanted to just further presence this notion of how stakeholders are not winning here.
Good. Thank you. All right. So who's winning and who's not winning? Well, in unconscious capitalism, right, it's all about the shareholders and getting as much money back to the shareholders as you can. In conscious capitalism, one of the four tenets is that all stakeholders must have a way forward. They must have a way to win, i.e. stay in business and be successful for the system to work. Well, who's losing in U.S. healthcare today? Number one, the corporations are paying for it. They're paying 300% just on the health benefit side, not to mention the fact they're sending a bunch of money into Medicare. And so financially, it's sucking all the money that could have gone into R&D, raises, expansion, acquisition of other companies is being sucked into healthcare. That's where, Warren says, it's a tapeworm sucking the blood out of America, the nutrients out of American business. So we've got that whole loss on the people who are paying for it, which is why I say he who has the gold usually rules. In this case, corporate leaders in America have abdicated their power. And that's a huge point of today's broadcast. If you are in a place, in a corporation, where you help determine the health benefits, you have power that you're not using, that if you will use, will save lives and improve the value of your company. So that's the first people who are losing. Second group that's losing are the employees that are actually having to use the healthcare system.
Yes.
The term functionally unemployed means that you walking around with a card in your wallet that you, with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, whatever it is, and you think that you've got protection.
Right.
And then something happens and you realize, oh, wait, I've only got protection after I bankrupted myself or my family. And that's not really protection. And so if I can't afford to use the card that's in my pocket, what good is the card in my pocket? That's called functionally uninsured. When you put people in a position where they have to choose to take their medicine or pay their mortgage or take their medicine or feed their children, that is a horrendous situation. And it is the situation called American health benefits today. And so for the corporate leaders or the people who influence the health benefits that are listening, we do pressure testing and we ask the question, what percentage of the company could actually use the benefit they're paying for, which is, again, very ironic. And the answer usually is about 25%.
Oh, my word.
70% of people who walk around with a card in their pocket think they're protected and they're on the path to financial devastation if they become ill. And so we do away with that. We fix that. And today, it doesn't cost corporations any more to fix that than to go along with this delusion that you're actually doing something good for your employees.
This is so important, Scott. I'm so happy to have you on the show. This is such an important topic to talk about. Now, there's one other element here, too, relative to what's happening that you talk about in your books that I think is also important. You talk about how corrupt incentives and lobbying have created many crony capitalistic laws and free enterprise no longer rules. You say a system must be created in which all stakeholders have a way forward successfully to receive quality healthcare at an affordable cost, which of course we're going to talk about next. But this notion of this, this system that we have in place, this it reminds me of like the Titanic, right? How do you turn the ship?
Yeah, it's so ironic. By the way, I'm going to finish the last thought. The third group that's of stakeholders who are losing are primary care physicians. So we're not going to talk about that today. Just know that's a big part of my life is to transform that also.
Okay.
So
thanks.
to answer the current question, I this is perhaps one of the most challenging aspects in my life, to get up in the morning and know we've got a, 3 trillion going, it maybe actually be 4.2 trillion is the last number I saw, locomotive that is designed. A third of the money going into healthcare goes to middlemen. A third of the money, and in the other 2/3, when you look at the people who are actually taking care of patients, like the on the ground people taking care of, it's less than a third. So 2/3 of this $4.2 trillion is going to administrative and other middle kind of people who don't deliver care. And if you try to change the system, please be careful. As a perfect example of that is I was the chief medical strategy officer of a group that had 343 doctors. We grew to 510. My job was to transform our care from a fee-for-service kind of rat race to value-based care. And we were very, very successful. We decreased the cost of care by $16 per month per person back in, the late 2000s, which was, we decreased it 5% in 2 years. And we were just starting that initiative. To make a long story short, Obama was coming in, ACOs were being created. And so I went to a large healthcare system that had 17 hospitals and said, hey, we have doctors. We've proven we can manage risk and save lives. You have hospitals. If we work together, we can get a first mover advantage. We'll actually significantly increase your footprint in North Texas. And you have to do that because when people are healthier, they don't use the hospitals much. So for the hospitals to win, you have to take care of more people. And they're like, oh, brilliant idea. Let's do that. Long story short, a year later, they bought us, and which was not something I had hoped for. In fact, I hoped it wouldn't happen. And when they did, they shut down all of the work that I had done in doing this. And I went to the chief strategy officer and said, what just happened? He said, Scott, where do you think that money was coming from? You were keeping people out of the hospital. And we looked at your doctors when we signed the NDA, and we were down over $100 million in revenue in our hospitals because of the work you were doing.
Wow.
And if you had, and it was accelerating, and if your corporation had continued to be successful or become more successful in managing health risk, we could have had to shut a hospital down, and we couldn't let that happen. So we bought your company to shut you down. Now, please, in 5 years, we think we'll need to reinvent everything you've done, but by then we'll have figured out how to, be viable, if you will, in the new system. So in all fairness, I said, how can you do that? That seems to go against the purpose, which is another conscious capitalism, serving a higher purpose.
Right.
I got really clear in that moment, it's not about serving a higher purpose.
Right. Yes.
It was about keeping a non-for-profit hospital system making billions of dollars in surplus. They don't make a profit. They make surplus, but then they pay their CEO $5 million a year. They pay their vice presidents $1 million a year. They take the money out a different way. And it's supposed to be in some sort of perverted, taking care of the community sort of way. So I got really clear that the purpose is perverted in healthcare. And in what he said to me is that it was his fiduciary responsibility to ensure and protect the well-being of the company that they were in charge of. And so therefore they had to shut us down. It's just honoring the fiduciary responsibility of his company. Now, in fairness, he was gone in 2 years because then the leadership, and many of them are still there, that won the battle. Because there was a battle when Obama came in between forward-thinking people who thought, the way forward is to serve the purpose of health and well-being of our people and their communities. And then there was the old guard who said, no, it's to make and generate as much revenue and profit as we can. And they're the ones that, you saw cranes at every hospital through the last decade because they're building more infrastructure and increasing their fixed expense because that was the way to make money. And in this particular instance, those people won, and they're still are in control today. So they're literally using human beings as widgets to maximize profit instead of serving the communities, which is what most of us thought a non-for-profit did. So when I get up every morning, and by the way, the next thing out of his mouth was, he and I were good friends. He's a great guy. And he said, Scott, I told you this out of respect for you, so that you wouldn't, be walking around wondering what happened and not knowing. I laid it on the line. But for 2 years, if you tell anybody this, I've got 17 lawyers and we will bankrupt you. I mean, we will take you and drag you through the slime and the mud. So you have two choices. You can become a medical director for a hospital. You can resign and we'll give you a nice severance package for 2 years. And, or you can, declare war and we'll go fight it out. So yeah, I was a coward. I chose B and went to work for corporations at that point. And that's how I got into, because my thought was, let's go to the people who pay for healthcare. They won't stand for this. But honestly, most of them are, when I bring this to their attention, they're saying, that's not what we do. We're not a healthcare company. I'm like, yeah, you're running a small healthcare company inside your corporation, spending millions and millions of dollars. Why don't you take control of that and manage that well? And they're like, it's a distraction. We believe in focus. And so, unfortunately, the status quo in America is that they're asleep at the wheel. They're not paying attention, and they're spending millions of dollars we shouldn't be spending, and their people are dying and functionally uninsured. It's an incredible situation to watch. And if you try to change it, you best watch out, because there's, $4.2 trillion worth of people making their living off of this, and they do not want things to change.
Well, I'm so happy. This is such an incredibly important conversation to have. And then, of course, coming together here, you mentioned it already in the last segment, but what you say, the opportunity is to reframe the current system in the context of conscious capitalism, to provide a way forward for leaders wishing to have a more productive and successful strategy to improve the health and lower the cost of the care of their corporations, employees, and their family members. That sounds like something worth getting up for to me.
And probably one of the highlights of my life is working with a guy named Kerry Everett. He was the CEO or the president for Hilti Tools out of Tulsa, and Oklahoma. And they've now moved their corporate headquarters to Dallas, and he's retired. But the thing that he did was, he said, we were in a meeting one day, actually. It was very dramatic. I was there. I was in Tulsa. And we had a break determining their health benefits for next year. And he was like, man, my costs keep going up. This is really annoying. What are my choices? And that's why they brought me up there. And I said, well, you can either invest in your people and help them get healthier. And here are the systems. Here's the way to do that. And, we have the 10 pillars that we put in place. We work with the HR staff. It is a very clear, proven methodology. It's got 10 years of research. It decreases the health benefit costs. It increases the quality of the culture and the dedication, the stickiness, the employer of choice, if you will, of the corporation. It is a true win-win-win, which in this very difficult situation where it's not that hard to do, it's not, but it is. It takes effort. It takes focus, and it takes the CEO being willing to assign their HR staff to make it happen. And so anyway, Kerry, we took the break. When we went to start again, the HR person and the benefits person didn't come in. And we sat there for 15, 20 minutes. Finally, they walked in and said, Kerry, they found our number one, they said his name, I'm not going to, salesperson in the country dead in Los Angeles this morning. He had a massive heart attack last night, and he was alone in his hotel room. And they found him this morning when he didn't show up, and they went and found what was going on. And Kerry turned to me and said, Scott, on my watch, that will never happen again. Because a heart attack and a stroke is a medical failure. It didn't have to happen. It's the 5 to 20 years you talked about earlier. He said, on my watch, that's done. Tell me what to do. And they were having about 15 heart attacks a year when he made that statement inside their company. It's a nice sized company. It's 3,500, 4,000 employees. And 2 years later, we had 2 heart attacks. Now that saved them a fortune because, those 13 heart attacks would have cost a lot of money. More importantly though, it saved lives, and it began a transformation that goes on to this day inside their corporation. It's just stunning to see what happens. They're spending less, getting more, having a better work environment, and adding years to life and life to the years of their employees.
Sounds great to me, Scott. This is amazing. I'm so glad to have you. Let's catch our last break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Dr. Scott Conard, a medical doctor who is the author of The Art of Medical Leadership, Intuitive Wellbeing, The 7 Numbers, and The 7 Healers. We've been talking a bit about the opportunity that companies have to be able to greatly change the way that they govern their health of their employees. After the break, we're going to talk more about the actual work that he's doing to help companies do so. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at EliseCortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. One other bit of news I want to share with you is my second book came out in September of 21. It's called Passionately Striving and Why. And what that book is that is a collection of 25 stories from women around the world that I found from Australia to Zambia. And they share their very intimate story of how they discovered their purpose and are now serving from it. So it's meant to be one part education, one part inspiration. Come along with us. Hope you'll check it out. If you're just joining the program today, my guest is Dr. Scott Conard, a medical doctor who is the founder and partner of Converging Health and physician executive to boards, health systems, corporations, and medical groups. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So before in the last segment, we certainly set up well the opportunity, the promise here. But I want to actually talk about what you call out here in your work here is the opportunity for successful change inside companies is the creation of a culture of health and well-being. I love that. Of course, I want them to have a culture anchored in meaning and purpose, but a culture of health and well-being that would comprise all of that sounds pretty good to me.
Well, and thank you for your work in the world, Elise. I go to bed at night knowing that you're out there making such a huge difference with the people you interact with through your books, through your radio show, and through your work. So first of all, let me just acknowledge that and thank you. And I hope the people listening to the show really do give you a call and find out the scope of what you could do to help them.
Thank you. That's so lovely. Thank you.
Well, so let's talk about, I was just talking about the CEO of a large corporation. And he said, my purpose when I started to work and grow, and the corporation is a remarkable corporation in that it's dedicated to its people and corporate development. He said, my purpose was to run a really successful company. In his retirement, he said, as a part of my retirement, I have to be honest, the change that we made in creating a culture of well-being, and that's financial, it's physical, emotional, spiritual, which I would say spiritual and consciousness would be, right there together, living your life on purpose and not by accident. Mm-hmm. In the lives that we saved, and I worked with him about 6 years before he retired. He said, the lives that we've saved, the calls I get from my employees is as rewarding as any financial or growth metric. He took his company to over $1 billion. And he said, it's as rewarding as anything I've ever done professionally. And so for those of you who have any benefit influence in your companies, I hope that your purpose is like his, to win in the company, but also to influence and make a very positive impact on the employees. And so how do you do that is the question I hear you asking me, Elise. Mm-hmm. And the answer is not hard. There's a Dr. Ray Fabius, who's a good friend of mine, who's really kind of the father of population health. And they've done 10 years of research. It reminds me of the Firms of Endearment book mm-hmm. Raj Sisodia did with conscious capitalism, where if you embrace the conscious capitalism principles, you end up one of the most successful companies on Wall Street, literally. Well, with the culture of health and well-being, when they have done 10 years of research and there are 10 pillars, each pillar is broken down. There's a total of 55 things that a corporation can do. And if you empower your HR staff to do these, they're not expensive in the sense that they don't cost a lot of money, but there are a different mindset, a different way of thinking. So you're actually training your corporation to start to think differently. And in doing that, you actually save money over time, and it doesn't cost a significant amount of money to do it. So it's a win-win-win for the corporation, for the people who are realizing their purpose as leaders, and for the other stakeholders in the equation. So again, what happens is it's very straightforward. There's an information collecting period, the 55 areas that data is collected. Each one is scored. And so the company can get very quickly a scorecard on how they're doing. And then the ones that would make the biggest difference are starting to work on first. And inevitably what happens is, so the ideal score is 750 or higher. It's out of 1,000. And the company will start to accumulate points. Well, for every 50 points they accumulate, their healthcare trend, the amount of money they're spending on healthcare, goes down by 0.5%. Most companies, they start in the 250 to 400 range. So as you can see, as you start going through and just over time, it's a journey, it's a 3-year journey, start to get this mindset on and institutionalize it, your money comes down. And we're talking millions of dollars for the average corporation of 500 to 1,000 people. So it's a very well worked out technology. Now, the surprise was, and what Ray did is he said, well, let's look at the performance of these companies financially and see if there's any correlation. And guess what? It's like firms of endearment.
Right.
The corporations, there was lower turnover. They were places people wanted to work. A lot of kind of B corporation tenants. The B corporations, I think, have 5 or 6 of the first of the 55 things that need to be done. This is an expansion of that and a deepening of it. And so the performance was much, much better in terms of net value. So not only do you decrease the cost of doing business, which drops straight to the bottom line, and the PE firms right now buying up everything, that you multiply that by 5 to 12 as you increase your EBITDA. And if you take it down $3 million, you increase the value of the company by $15 million, and you've got a place where people want to work. It's easier to get and maintain employees, and your healthcare spend comes down. So it is absolutely the way that conscious leaders in America are moving, and it's such an honor to be a part of this transformation.
Oh, I have to introduce you to other people as well, Scott. So I want to be part of helping to crescendo this wave, if you will, into the world. So now what you were just talking about there, is that what you call your intuitive well-being program? Is that what that is, or is that something else?
Well, Elise, thank you for asking that. In my life, I get up every day, and again, my mission statement's adding years to your life and life to your years by empowering you to take control of your health. And that's with whomever. I mean, most of the people that I have that filled on will never know my name and never know I existed, because I'm working through corporations. I'm working through healthcare systems. I'm working through other physicians and things. And that's where the book, The 7 Numbers, which basically is like a report card, The 7 Healers, which is how you change those numbers, not by pills, procedures, and surgeries, but by embracing and pulling towards you the health and well-being you already possess. Healing comes from inside. It doesn't come from a pill, procedure, or surgery. You already have it. Mm-hmm. Everybody listening to this broadcast, I hope they appreciate they're whole and perfect and complete as they are today. Now, you may not have a mindset that's having you appreciate your wholeness and completeness, and you may be going through suffering and difficult times because of the choices and the genetic code and everything else, your society, your environment, all of your financial well-being, all of those things contribute. But at the end of the day, in helping people discover intuitive well-being, what one finds is that at the end of the journey, you're older. So, your lungs, your kidney, your heart may not be functioning as well as it was back at the beginning, but you have everything that you needed to be successful at the end of the journey and at every moment in the journey. So quit looking out there for the answer and realize that it's already within you, and you're working to intuitively walk out your life. And so if I could at least go on one last thought, we all start out unconsciously incompetent. That's where I love conscious capitalism. I love the work you're doing with purpose. First thing that happens to us is something is uncovered. A distinction is brought to us, and it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was possible. And so there's an uncovering. Well, as soon as there's an uncovering, you went from unconsciously incompetent, like you didn't even know it was there, to consciously incompetent. Oh crap! I see now that's a possibility, and I'm not doing it. So how do I do that? And that's where coaches and the program that we have that has the 55 points I just talked about for corporations. And I also have a program for primary care practices, particularly reveal. These are the habits. These are the things one has to do to go from consciously incompetent to consciously competent. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of work. And what inevitably happens is you focus on it for a period of time and then you fall back down. You focus on a period of time and fall back down. We all know that with weight loss, right? Most of us have lost more than we weigh in our lifetime, right?
It's so true.
Yet we still weigh what we weigh. So So that takes a lot of energy. But then there's a shift to go from consciously competent. So I'm having to work hard, but my numbers are a goal. I weigh a more appropriate amount, or my company's making more money, or, I'm doing our job. Our corporation is thriving more, to unconscious competence, which is the final step, and that is the intuitive well-being step. And this is, Elise, where you come in, because one of the biggest distinctions that we have in every program, everything I do, is that the difference between a person who is gutting it out and being successful because of hard work and a person who has intuitive well-being in their life is that they lock into their purpose.
Yes.
And this do have loop that we teach in America, where, okay, I want to have this. So in order to have that, what I have to do is, and then you start doing, you become a human doing, and you're just doing as much as you can. But inevitably, the tyranny of the urgent and exhaustion and willpower is not enough. You fall off the donkey cart and you're back where you started. And then it's very discouraging. And we start seeing hopelessness and helplessness and depression and anxiety that creep into people's lives as they go through that cycle. Well, the truth is that you've got to discover who you are, and leadership starts from self-discovery. It starts from discovering, what are your passions? Why are you on earth? What gives you energy and doesn't suck your energy out from you every day? And you become selfish in that you're learning about your passion and who you are. And then in doing that, you say, okay, now if that's who I am and that's my passion, then what would I do in the world to express that? And then when you do that, you start to have what you wanted in the first place, but you were going around, you're exactly backwards, going around it the wrong way. So we have to get out of the do have, loop and get into the human being that's doing what they're doing to have whatever that generates in the world. You have to actually lighten your hold on what you want to have and focus your energy on who you are and who you're going to be and what you're going to do out of that. So as you discover that wellspring of energy and power and influence, you go from consciously competent, which is a butt kicking, to unconsciously competent, which is like, it's literally like you're going from swimming upstream all the time, and you're just turning around and you're starting to swim downstream, and all of a sudden your life picks up this amazing momentum.
Yes.
And the joy, peace, patience, kindness, self-control, love that you experience in your life just starts to abound and erupt. And you're like, how can I be the same person living the same life? It's great.
I know exactly what you're saying, because that's what I can tell people do. So I loved how you said that. And we managed already to get out of time. So we're at the end of the show already. It happens so fast, right? So the show is listened to by people around the world, Scott, who want to help create workplaces where people actually want to come to work and give their best. We create those inspirational leaders that lead them to their greatness and help them realize their potential. And we do business that betters the world. What would you like to leave them with today?
I really am a stand for your success. I'm a stand for you discovering who you are and being the influential force that you're meant to be. And if I can assist in any way, and particularly if you have any influence in your company around health benefits or any of those things, then let me come work with you on those things and the principles that we will work on together. You can expand the rest of your company and it will realize its potential and its beauty in the world.
Beautiful way to finish, Dr. Conard. Wow. And what an incredible privilege to have you on the show. I'm so happy to know you and have you in my life as well. So thank you for sharing your heart and your wisdom with us.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. And Elise, thank you for all you do and for making this possible.
So welcome. So welcome. Listeners and viewers, if you want to learn more about Dr. Scott Conard, his work or his books, just go to converginghealth.com as a start. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Robert Craig, a filmmaker, talking about his journey from a successful entrepreneur selling gutters to the creator of substantive films showcasing important life lessons and inspiration. Next week, we'll be on the air with Dr. Richard Winters of the Leadership Development Group for the Mayo Clinic Care Network, talking about his new book, You're the Leader, Now What? See you there. And remember that work is an integral and important part of our lives and can be one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.